years. It happens. Okay. It happens and it comes up. And I'll give you a real life example from a couple of years ago. Same agent in both scenarios. Buyer one, and this agent was familiar with in terms of their background, their means, gets a phone call, decides to show them a house. Right away, no questions asked, no consultation, no proof of funds, whatever it may be. Client number two asks to see the same house. The agent is unfamiliar with the client. The agent asks for a buyer consultation or proof of funds. I can't remember now. This is years ago. And the agent gets a little bit of hot water because of the inconsistency to approach. And client number two started to go on a little bit of a rant and rampage, attacking the agent's reputation and brand. And really tough moment to learn from, but consistency is key. Consistency is key. What? No, it's just pure happenstance. The agent was aware of the first agent, had a relationship with the first client. Yes, but that's the point. Treating them differently in your approach is where inconsistencies in your approach is where you can get caught in fair housing violations or audits. Just have to be consistent. That's all the key to the messages.
So did it boil down because the second person was asked for their
proof of funds and a buyer consultation and all?
Not asked.
Correct. Before they would go show a home.
But maybe he had shown him other homes that he would have had.
It, without peeling back the onion all the way into it, the point of the messages, we have to be consistent in our approach. Yes, Karen Flanagan, last question.
Okay. As far as consistency, would it be okay to assume people you have met versus haven't met, you stay consistent in that category, or is it the ones you have?
The question was, Karen asked was, people you know and have met versus those you have not met. Here's what I would tell you in an audit, and I've been a part of the audit. The audit's going to want to know, even though you know the person, how were you consistent in your approach to not create an unconscious bias as to how you served the client? So how you record that, whether you know them or not, I think is the key to the whole thing. Now, we're trying to draw awareness to it, because when you have awareness to it, we'll create action to it. Make sense? Cool. All right. So jumping into something we kicked off last week, and this was something I shared last year, but I thought it was really, really relevant. The untold story of 2021 was people became kinder. Global rates of helping strangers, volunteering, and giving to charity are nearly 25% above pre-pandemic levels. The dominant response to suffering is not selfishness, but it's compassion. The worst of times bring out the best in us. How do we know this? Global rates of helping a stranger spiked significantly after 2020. How is this relevant to us today? How is it relevant to us today? Is May 11th. Okay, sign up for Red Day today. And here's why. These are examples of us helping other people and what it does to put an incredible amount of gratitude and selflessness within your lives. There's 2019, there's 2021. By the way, the QR code will help you register today. And if you haven't registered yet, don't worry, 143 of your peers have already registered. So if you aren't one of the 143 who've already decided to make the commitment to jump in on May 11th to support on Red Day, I'd encourage you to do so. Here's the other thing. For X Housing, the slots for X Housing sold out. 50% of the slots for helping at the rescue mission sold out. We already have 100 people registered for Zacharias Acres. Are you going to join us? It's totally up to you. The beautiful thing about Red Day this year, and I give a shout out to Britton Keck out in Lake Country who helped us put this all together, as we talked about last week, is this is the choose your own adventure. 1, X Housing, already done. You missed that chance. 2, United Way Diaper Bank. You can participate by volunteering to help us pack 50,000 diapers in either Waukesha or Milwaukee. You have a choice, but it's limited to the first 100 people. The beauty of those, it's their 2-hour time slots. 3, where we have an unlimited capacity to serve, is at Zacharias Acres, outdoors to helping an incredible organization that helps families with special needs kids help get outside and prepare their facility for the needs of serving others and serving families this year. So 3 ways in which that you can participate. And if you're unavailable on May 11th, don't worry. We have other ways in which that you can touch your database and sphere in terms of how you give back within your community. It's through food pantry donations that we will be collecting within the market centers between now and May 11th, supporting the River West Food Pantry, Tosa Cares, Heartland Area Food Pantry, or the New Berlin Food Pantry, all close to the 4 locations in which we serve. Cool. So if you haven't registered yet and you aren't part of the 143 people, I would encourage you to do so on May 11th. Okay. Choose your own adventure, participate, give back in the world, and you will find an incredible amount of gratitude in the servant way in which that we give back to the communities in which we serve. Yes. Also, last reminder, if you'd like a KW Red t-shirt for Red Day, we need you to register by today because we need to place that order today. Cool. Thank you for the reminder, Wooten. All right. So I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I wanted to kind of reground the group in terms of my phrases of focus in 2023, right? And we talked about today is day 1. I shared with you Jeff Bezos's letter that he sent to shareholders on day 1 of their IPO, and it talked about change, and it talked about not being afraid to take risks in order to change organizations. I think that's somewhat relevant to today, especially out here in Lake Country. Highly encourage you to read it. Helps you understand the mindset of what it is that you need to do to take risks in order to move your business and mindset forward. 2, we talked about it already this morning in terms of being consistent. Be consistent in your approach, be consistent in your process, be consistent in your systems. There's a reason why teams that scale. It's because they're consistent in their approach. And I'll give you an example. What they do for $1 million listing, they'll do for $100,000 listing. Now, they may do a bit more in terms of their marketing and their approach to the $1 million listing, but the general root and foundation to their process is they are incredibly consistent, whether it's $1 million listing or $100,000 listing. Lastly is be curious. And this is what I'm going to lead with this morning. Be curious. Okay. Here's what I know. Someone gives you a book, you never read it. It sits on your shelf. Okay. So I'm going to help you synthesize something that I've been reading lately, and it's called the Harvard Business Review Emotional Intelligence Series. And the series goes through mindfulness, resilience, influence and persuasion, happiness, authentic leadership, and empathy. And you know what's interesting? A lot of you know I like to go to Sendix. Okay. And I talk about how I go to Sendix all the time because I enjoy seeing all the people I need to see at Sendix. For example, I went to Sendix in Lake Country last week, and guess who I saw for the first time in forever? Becky Batley. We caught up in the aisles of Sendix. It was incredible. Okay. You see me at Sendix every single day. And you want to know one of the first questions I always get within Sendix? How's the market? And then you know what the follow-up to that is? Man, I hope you're doing okay. It's really tough out there right now. You know, this, that, and the other. And people feel sorry for me. And I'm like, why do you feel sorry for me? We had a great last couple of 5-year, 6-year run of the market. It's okay. We're not losing sleep over where we are today, right? And I've challenged the group as it relates to you're not in it for a great year, you're in it for a great career. Okay. And last week with the ALC, I challenged the group all around happiness and how you find joy in the process and the journey. And I'm going to share with you a cliff notes of this story today. So guess what? I'll save you the time if you don't have the time to read the book. Okay. Here's the premise behind one of the chapters within the emotional intelligence series around happiness. Okay. Harvard pulls a collection of studies and various things that studied effectively happiness. Okay. And the very opening line of the first chapter talks about happiness feels intolerably elusive. Happiness feels intolerably elusive. And how do they describe this? It's like fog. See, you can see it from afar because it's dense with shape, but as you approach it, its particles loosen and suddenly it becomes out of reach, even though it's all around you. Think about as you approach fog and then when you're in fog. Okay. And what I've found in our industry is that people are constantly chasing a number. They're constantly chasing a number. And then guess what happens once they achieve the number? The number moves. The number moves. And the question I ask them is, were you happy when you achieved the number? Were you happy when you achieved the number? Yet, most of our industry is defined based on lag metrics. What you did in the past doesn't define what you do in the future. Lag metrics versus lead metrics. Okay. And within the book, it talks about the biggest misconception of happiness is this: happiness is an end, not a means. The biggest misconception is that happiness is an end. We think that we get what we want, then we will be happy. And the thing they challenged us with is that's not how our brains work. Being happy is not the end goal. What's important is the journey, finding out what makes us happiest, and regularly engaging in those activities leads to fulfillment. Okay. What's important is the journey, finding out what makes us happiest, and regularly engaging in those activities leads to fulfillment. Now, within the book, they focused on a very particular couple. Okay. There was one guy, his name is Jim. Jim is 29 years old, and he was a professional athlete in the time who fell deeply ill at the peak of his athletic prowess. Okay. They had a 2-year-old, and they had another child on the way. And in the book, it talks about how his wife was deeply miserable through this whole process. They had another child on the way. She was trying to manage the household. She had troubles looking at her husband, who is stuck in the hospital for a long time. And yet she found something incredibly profound about the husband. The husband found peace in his journey and continued to make improvements despite setbacks along his health journey. And during the healing process, he began a journey of searching for meaning in life. And he started studying, what is the meaning of life and how do I take notes on the journey? And it talks about how he had a gratitude journal. He started expressing gratitude. He did all these things. And then what happened was his doctors stayed late. His nurses gave him extra care. And as they were leaving the hospital after he finished all of this, that his wife asked the caretakers, how come it is that you spend so much time with Jim versus other patients? And the caretakers said it's because Jim showed sincere appreciation and gratitude for the service we provided. And the additional service that they provided allowed him to move faster through his journey to get over his health outcomes. Okay. And what was the most important factor in helping Jim find peace in where he was, and ultimately finding peace in the journey to get him to where he was today? And I'll share with you a little bit of a research that they understood around lasting contentment. Okay. And the phrase is PERMA. They studied positive emotion, which is peace, gratitude, and satisfaction. They studied engagement, which is the feeling of disappeared time. They studied relationships. How and where do you find meaningful relationships? Meaning, which is serving a cause bigger than ourselves, and the accomplishment or achievement. Okay. And Jim and his wife talked about how they began putting the practice of PERMA within their lives, and the impact that it had on his long-term care in terms of helping him overcome his health situation was profound. Okay. And in the very end of one of the chapters, talking about Jim's story, it talks about how happiness is not the absence of suffering, it's the ability to rebound from it. And when he found peace in that, and his ability to rebound from suffering, he found happiness. Because happiness includes contentment, well-being, and the emotional flexibility to experience the full range of emotions. Okay. And the reason why I share this with you today, and why I took a total pause and a total left curve or right curve from you as it relates to what we would normally do on a Tuesday team meeting, is this. In a market that's incredibly tough, in a market where you may have written 5 offers on a Saturday and went 0 for 5, in a market where everybody is reading the news and hearing the stories and this, that, and the other as it relates to how difficult it is. And all you do is you keep hearing about, oh, it must be really hard. Oh, I feel bad for you right now. Oh, this, that, and the other. Woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. Is that you find contentment and peace in the journey that you're on, because you're not in it for a great year, you're in it for a great career. And so as you think about the journey that you're on right now, in the middle of the crux and the heat of the spring market, I would challenge you to practice PERMA. How do you find positive emotion, peace, gratitude, and satisfaction? How do you drive engagement in terms of when you're totally engaged, you have a feeling of disappeared time? What are the relationships that you have in the community that you surround yourself with? What is the meaning in order to serve a cause bigger than ourselves? Whether it's your clients, whether it's your family, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your partner, right? Those who you take care of, serving a cause bigger than ourselves. And what is the achievement or accomplishment? PERMA. So there you have it. Now, the reason why I did this exactly in the middle of team meeting is I want you to find peace in the pace in order to find your journey. Okay. So I'm going to jump into upcoming training and education, and I'm going to finish with a quick recap of where we are within the market. Okay. So April, we're winding out April, handful of things to point out this week. One, new market, new plan, Glover U, which is tomorrow from 9 to 12:30 at the Sheraton Milwaukee Brookfield Hotel, is sold out. If you want a seat, hit up somebody on the leadership team. We'll find a way to squeeze you in. Okay. Tomorrow from 9 to 12:30, basically sold out. But if you want to get in, let us know. Okay. 2, there's a free social media workshop all via Zoom on Thursday, April 27th at 1 p.m. Okay, all around what to post, when to post, how to beat the algorithm, best contact for interaction, how to build referral partners, common mistakes, and more. I just had a conversation with someone about social media last week. I said, if you only live on social media, you can't build a big business. But you can't build a big business if you aren't engaged in social media. Make sense? April 27th at 1 p.m. via Zoom. Lastly, May training calendar is launching this week. A handful of things for you guys to pay attention to. 1, anything that's in person is color coded, and the locations based on where the color is up here on the top. 2, the second week of May, the leadership team is hosting. We are going to a conference. Many of the leadership team are, so there's no team meeting on Tuesday, May 9th. And then we come back with an incredibly engaged group to give back to our communities of where we live, work, and play on Red Day, May 11th. Lastly, a handful of other things to point out. Lots of different things at various locations, and anything that's in black is via Zoom. All you got to do is click on the black thing. It'll take you into the Zoom link and take you where you want to be. Sound good? Beautiful. All right, here we are, weekly market insights. What is the market telling us? Okay. Now, remember about what I talked about from the Cliff Notes of the Happiness book and the Harvard Business Review. Find contentment on your journey. Find contentment on your journey on where it is that you want to go. Find deep, meaningful relationships, plug into those relationships, and find a cause that you serve bigger than yourself. Okay. New listing units, again, still relatively had a nice little pop last week, a little bit of a dip versus prior week, 418 new listings that came to the market. Still, we're seeing about a 30% increase over the 24-week average, which the 24-week average is 364. So seeing 418 is a really positive sign. The beauty of this is if you just look back at the last 4 weeks, 431, 426, 490, 418, again, all positive signs as it relates to incremental new listings coming to the market here in April. Now, what does this mean as it relates to demand? Last week, I talked about the mismatch as it relates to Easter. So we had to look post the 2-week holiday of Easter of the mismatch to understand where the demand sits. The beauty of it is demand this year in terms of showing activity, despite having 30% less inventory, is still higher this year than what it was last year. Showing activity with 30% less inventory. Okay. An important factor to talk about in being preemptive with your buyer clients to help them understand almost everything is in competition. There is more showing activity this year with 30% less listings. Okay. Now, sales absorption rate, again, indication of demand. It's the percentage of inventory that goes under contract in a given week. The latest 24-week average is 9.2% of the inventory goes under contract in a given week. Last week, it was 13.8. 2 weeks ago, it was 12.9%. It's almost 50% higher than what the 24-week average is. Again, we're seeing this because of showing time activity being up, and the percentage of units that are going under contract pretty significantly is where the sales absorption rate is showing up. Now, all of this also has to relate to increased appreciation within home values. Okay. This year, they were predicting around 4.5% to 5% appreciation in home values. This year, we're sitting around 10%. It's nearly double what they predicted. Again, higher showing activity than we had last year with 30% less inventory. Okay. Now, units that are going under contract last week, the second week in a row, is the highest units that went under contract in the last 2 weeks, or for 2023, 444 units that went under contract last week alone. Again, the single highest week that went on units that went under contract in a given week. 2 weeks ago was 427. All positive, because if we're looking at the new listing inventory coming onto the line, 426, 490, 418, and then you look at units that are going under contract, it's basically for every 1 unit that comes to the market, 1 unit's coming off the market. It's a 1-for-1 trade. We will be in the market of the moment of where we are for the foreseeable future. Okay. Prepare yourselves that, prepare your sellers for that, prepare your buyers for that. Think strategically about how you sharpen your pencil and what it is that you do to take listings to the market in order to maximize their value. And then you also have to think about how you're negotiating as it relates to how you're going to get your buyers under contract in an incredibly competitive market. The beautiful thing of it is, for the majority of our room and group, you've been here before. It's nothing new, right? Now, what does this mean for total inventory? Last week, there were basically 3,200 homes that were on the market. We're still an incredibly depressed market in terms of total inventory and how that plays out against demand, which is why we're seeing a 10% appreciation in homes again this year, and why we're seeing a basically 1-for-1 trade-off as something comes on, something comes off. Make sense? Lastly, I shared this with you last year, but I'm going to share it again because I think it's an incredibly powerful slide. Since the 1970s, home appreciation has outpaced or kept pace with inflation. This is a great statistic or slide to share with your sellers or buyers, especially the buyers who are like, is now the right time? Remember, time in the market beats timing the market. Home appreciation has outpaced inflation consistently going back to the 1970s. And as it relates to time in the market beats timing the market, is you have to look at future pacing appreciation. Okay. They're predicting over the next 5 years, okay, from 2022 to 2027, the next 5 years baseline appreciation will be 27%. Home value appreciation is outpacing the cost of capital. It's outpacing inflation. Simply as a balance sheet asset item, it's an incredibly valuable investment. So let's take a look at a $360,000 home. You have a client who puts 10% down, it's $36,000. Their net equity gain over the next 5 years on a predicted compounded 27% interest is a $96,000 equity gain. So cash on cash return of the $36,000 they put in and the $96,000 equity gain they got was 166%. Time in the market beats timing the market. The asset class continues to appreciate faster than inflation and faster than the cost of capital. Sound good? Yes. Karen Trimble has a question. Hang tight. Yeah.
And I think that's very careful. People spend their own price. So counseling your buyers about, I mean, folks are like in the market are going at least 10% of this price.
Yeah.
Well,
yep.
So I like those products, but I wonder, like, I'm my buyers, especially that first-time home buyer, second step, you know, don't tell me once in years.
Yep. No.
5 to 7 years. But you
I-
are looking, this is a solid market.
Yeah. So Karen's
that this is, that you really understand.
correct. Real quick, what Karen it was advising is she has concern that people are paying 10% over ask price, list price, and that they may be buying at the peak of the market. And that what happens, you know, even within the first year to 2 years, they're only paying interest. They're not really paying down their equity, right? And what happens? What do we do? here's the thing, you have to remember and think about. Going back to the 1930s, every market has always corrected itself in a 5-year span. 5 to 7 years. The average person in southeastern Wisconsin holds their home for 8 years. So if they plan to sell less than 5 years, there is a serious concern as it relates to, are they buying too high? Now, the average being 8 years hold, we have to have a real frank conversation with buyers up front. Look, if you plan to sell this in less than 5 years, you just have to understand the math as it relates, historical math as it relates to value. However, if you're the average homeowner and you hold it for 8 years, like they do in southeastern Wisconsin, every market corrects itself within a 5 to 7 year period. Over that period, you should be fine if you're the average. But if you're not average and you want to sell less than 5 years, you need to be aware of what's going on or what could happen to you as it relates to the asset on your balance sheet. Yes, John Lorenz.
Okay, this is a little bit further about Karen's sense. So with these numbers, it's kind of going to, if that house was listed at 320,000, or they paid 360, rated that at 60. Are you saying it's a $360,000 value home, or are you saying they went $20,000 to $40,000 over, so you take $40,000 off that 96,000, you yourself about $56,000 over 5 years?
You're going way too deep into a really simple analysis.
Okay.
The simple analysis is just simply if you over time compounding interest benefits you. Cool. With that, hopefully I made you think this morning. That is always my goal on a Tuesday morning. Guys, it's a beautiful day on April 25th. Lake Country crew, I'll let you jump over to the Lake Country meetup. North Shore and Innovation crew, I'll let you jump over to the new listings and buyer needs. Guys, have a great week. Thanks for jumping in.